We are fortunate enough to be joined by a veteran, an expert, an absolute superstar of all things fundraising, Janet Cobb. Janet has worked in the nonprofit arena pretty much her entire career, and is one of our professional fundraising coaches here at Bonterra, has her own practice, works with a lot of small to mid-sized nonprofits to really help them achieve their goals. As a certified fundraising executive, or as many of us in the industry know as a CFRE, and certified nonprofit professional, Janet specializes in working with small to mid-sized nonprofit organizations across the country to help them build capacity and acquire the skills they need to really support and expand their efforts. So thinking about growth, that's really Janet's specialty, and she's held pretty much every position I think there is to hold in the nonprofit world, from communications manager to development director to executive director, handling budgets that are small to massive. She really has been able to integrate all of her skills into nonprofit management, and is a abundance of knowledge. So you're super lucky to have Janet here. I will let you take it from here. Really appreciate you joining us as always. If you've been on a Janet webinar before, you know you're in for a treat. So I will stop talking now and hand it over to the expert.
Thank you, Amanda, for that lovely introduction. I have to say to everyone, despite all of that experience, if I could crack the board fundraising nut, I think I'd, win the Nobel Prize or something. So today we're going to talk about it. We're going to come up with some ideas, but it is a nut to crack. So let me get started with the slide deck that I have. We are going to talk today about engaging your board in active fundraising. And, this can run the gamut. So we're just going to cover some of the key parts that I think will, hopefully give you at least one idea to walk away with. If everybody walks away with one new idea, I think that this webinar was successful. So let's see what we can do. Amanda already introduced me, so I'll leave it there. But today we're going to talk about 4 key areas. One is about capitalizing on the passion of the board. Another is considering the data. A third is peer-to-peer campaigns, and a fourth is events. And we'll dig into each of those in this time we have together. Amanda asked you to put questions in the Q&A. She will be monitoring that. If she sees something that needs to be addressed right away, she'll interrupt me. Otherwise, we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. All right, so here we go. Capitalize on passion. I have to tell you that I don't know of any board member ever who joined a board to fail. Board members do not join to not be engaged and to not be helpful. Okay, we have to believe that, right? People don't intentionally become dead weight on a board, right? There's lots of things going on that could lead to that. So everything we're talking about today, I want to begin with the idea that board members are well-intentioned. We just have to figure out what's getting in the way of their good intentions and the successful results we're looking for, and bridge that gap. Okay, so that's what today is about, figuring out how to bridge that gap. There is no magic bullet. Different things work for different boards as a whole, in different communities, and for each individual, right? So that's sort of the blanket thing we have to begin with. But that being said, there is some passion that is driving a board member to join the board. So we have to capitalize on that passion. And we're going to do that in one of 4 ways. The first thing is we have to have an honest conversation. Okay. We have to talk about what it actually means to fundraise. Because fundraising, believe it or not, I'm sure you've heard it before, has very little to do with asking for money, right? Because fundraising fundamentally is about building relationships with people who care about what you care about. Okay. So if we start there, then our measure for success shifts, right? Because it's not just about the dollar amount. Yes, we do need to raise money, right? But that's not, that's kind of the after product of building relationships and getting people engaged in the cause we care about, the cause they care about, right? So helping board members to really understand this sometimes can remove some of the hesitation. I don't like to ask for money. I don't know rich people. All of those things, when you really focus on being successful, is about being an ambassador for the cause, right? That is what we're talking about. So then once we have that sort of out of the way, then we can talk about what their concerns are, right? I like to think about I like to compare it to my husband and his love for sports. He cares about sports. He loves sports. He listens to it on the radio. He watches it on TV. He looks at it at the computer. He reads about it. He talks to everybody about it. And he goes to things connected to sports when he can. There is no fear of talking about it. There is no hesitation. He just talks about it with people, and he wears clothes that tell people what he likes and and sometimes what he doesn't like, right? Like that sort of thing. If we can get our nonprofit people, our board members, our volunteers, our staff, to be as passionate about the cause that we care about as my husband and many other people in this world are about sports, the Olympics, right? Like all of these things, right? What a difference we would be making in this world. And yet somewhere we hold back, right? So we have to have that honest conversation. What do they really care about? Are they really passionate? Why are they involved? Why did they join the board in the first place? Why do they care about the cause? When you start really tapping into that, it becomes a motivator, because most nonprofits are, or many nonprofits are solving a problem, but all nonprofits, they exist to make the world a better place. So it might not be a particular social ill. It could be an arts organization. It could be a museum. It could be things that are making the world a better place in some way, shape, or form. And if we care, we will talk about it. It will be important to us. We will pay attention. We will want to know more. We want to share with other people about how important it is to us and to the world. Then we'll talk about how we go in and break down exactly how they can do it. But the first thing is to get to the point of having that honest conversation. Fundraising isn't solely about asking for money. And if they tap into why they are involved, and if they cannot passionately talk about why they are involved, then maybe they shouldn't be. And there's no shame or blame in that. You bless and release. Thank you for your time, for your interest. Be on your way, right? When you have that conversation, you will then find your champions. And when you find your champions, you begin to get more specific conversations about what they can do, because not everybody, even if they're a champion, can do the same thing, because people have different demands on their lives, right? People have different situations that dictate how much time and energy and everything that they can give to a volunteer activity. We have to remember that board members are volunteers, and therefore we should appreciate them and show them love and affection like we do all of our other volunteers. But we can have conversations about where they can participate. Then, once they're bought in, once they've said, count me in, we can start saying, well, what do we need to do to offer professional development for them? Can we plan a retreat? Can we set clearer expectations? How do we celebrate successes? Who can we bring in to help them be better at what they've decided they can do? And then what resources are we giving them? What does our case for support look like? What are our collateral materials? What opportunities and occasions do we give them to introduce the organization to other people? So that's sort of how we go through the process of capitalizing on their passion. And now what we're going to do is we're going to dig into some of those pieces to give you some tools for how you might further do that. First and foremost, we must be grateful for our board members. And I know on some days that can be very, very difficult. We want to strangle our board members more than we want to appreciate them, right? But we must create a grateful, I call it a culture of gratitude. I used to call it an attitude of gratitude. And if someone has heard this line from me before, my apologies, but I say it all the time. I talked about an attitude of gratitude until I had a teenage daughter, and I realized how quickly attitudes can change. We don't want attitudes of gratitude because they shift with the wind. We want a culture of gratitude where no matter what is going on, we are grateful. We are grateful for our board members. We are grateful for our donors. It is a choice to be grateful. It is not an attitude, right? And we have to help every staff person, every board member, every donor, every volunteer, every program participant. We have to instill and cultivate and nurture that attitude. See, I used it, that culture of gratitude, right? To be grateful. And once we start thinking about how grateful we are for our board, now, even if you're at the point where your board, and I've spoken with many, your board consists of 3 people who just agreed to put their names on the piece of paper so you, the do-gooder they know, could create this nonprofit and file the paperwork for the 501c3, that was still something. And for that, we are grateful. And we move on from there, right? So find what you can be grateful for somewhere in there and then grow from that. If you have a board that is a little bit more advanced and is trying but not doing very well, is promising but not following through, all of those things, there is a starting point. We have to have that starting point. Then, when we've demonstrated and honestly, authentically been grateful, and we've tapped into and asked them clearly why they are involved. And this can be a one-on-one conversation, but this can be done in a group where everybody gets to hear why other people chose to be involved with this organization, because they didn't have to be. They did not have to agree to sit on this board ever, right? When you hear why other people chose to do it, if everyone is truly being authentic and honest, then that opens up the world to why everybody else in the world might care about the cause you care about. It may not be the same driving force that you have, right? Someone might have a family member who's impacted by the cause you're working on. Someone else may have experienced it themselves. Someone else may be grateful that they've never experienced it and therefore want to make sure that those who do can get the help they need, right? Like all the things are possible. I once did this exercise with a board, and the reason someone initially chose to get involved was out of pure white guilt, which isn't a very flattering or, impressive reason to get involved with the cause. But that one trigger helped to create an entirely new way of thinking and acting, not only for that board member, but for everybody else involved, right? Everybody has their own reason for getting involved. So you got to tap into that. And then you have to give them tools like the circles of influence exercise to help them figure out how they can share the message with everybody they encounter. And this can be very simple. You walk them through an exercise saying, who do you encounter every day? Could be family member, could be friends, could be neighbors, could be the postman, could be the, grocery store clerk, could be anybody, right? Who do they encounter every single day? Who do they encounter once a week? Who do they encounter monthly? Who do they encounter more than monthly, but less than annually? Who do they encounter annually? This can be church members. This can be pickleball club members. This can be book club. This can be hot yoga. This can be car racing. This could be wood shop. This could be anybody. This could be your plumber, right? All of these people could be people who care about your cause. And until you ask them, or until you introduce the idea, you will never know, right? So once you've gotten your board members to write down all of these people, then you start saying, how are we going to introduce them? What is the key, right? Now, if I go get my hair done or my nail, that's not something I do, my nails done, or whatever, I go to the mechanic, I'm not, but some people do, right? And, if I'm going somewhere and this person, we're a casual sort of transactional relationship, what is the harm in saying, hey, I sit on this board, I'm curious, have you ever thought of blah, 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 right? Right? It could be an animals org and it's all about cats. Do you love cats or dogs? Right? Or both, or all animals, snakes, right? You can introduce the topic in a very non-confrontational, non-threatening way, just to see what they care about. Right? Then you begin creating events and activities and opportunities to engage further. So that's where we're looking at the opportunities. Would they be interested in a program or activity? We're having a play next week at the such and such club. Would you like to come? Right? We have a raffle. Would you like to buy a raffle ticket? Would you like to make a small campaign gift? Who wants to become a monthly donor, right? These are all very, very simple, easy, non-confrontational, doesn't have to be big money ways to talk to people. That's one of the primary purposes for ever having any kind of an event. Inviting somebody to attend an event, they can take it or leave it. It doesn't matter. No skin off your nose, but you've invited them, right? If you have $5 raffle tickets, I was a child when I had to go door to door knocking to sell candy bars. If someone didn't want the candy bar, that wasn't the end of my world, right? Well, maybe when I was 10, maybe it was, right? But it is about the offering. That's where in the board success lies. Are they willing to offer opportunities for engagement? They don't all have to be, can you give us $1,000? Can you give us $10,000? That comes later. The board, now some board members are really good at it, right? Some board members have no problem asking their buddies to fork over $10,000, right? If you turn in those circles, right? But many of us who are living and working and breathing small nonprofit, we don't turn in those circles. So we think nobody else does, but they do. And so we just keep talking about the cause we care about. Ask your board members who in their circles know they sit on the board. And the first exercise you give them is to make sure that 5 new people this month know that you sit on our board and what we do. Not an ask, not any kind of plea, not any kind of invitation. You are just sharing that you sit on a board. And if they can't do that, we bless and release. If they are afraid to tell someone they sit on your board and aren't able to tell, even in muddled, messed up language, why you exist, then maybe they shouldn't be on the board, right? So once you have the list of people, of their people, then they start putting in those people into these categories. What is the opportunity for me to invite them? First, I'll mention it to them. Next, I'll invite them. Where will I invite them? Now, I don't know about you, but I've had very strange conversations at the checkout counter when I go to the grocery store, if you don't go through self-pay now, right? And I do that a lot, but have you ever, when the little machine says, do you want to make a donation to the local blah, blah, blah? You could say, you know what, I'm not making a donation today because you know what, I sit on the board of this organization and it's a great organization. And so I'd love to talk to you about whether or not we can get on this little machine. Very easy opportunity. We just have to help them think about how to approach it. And this can be tedious. This can be a tedious exercise, but if you can get at those little tiny ideas, it's going to start generating things in folks' minds. Then we have to consider the data, right? We've got them thinking about all the people in their world. Then we turn them to thinking about the people already in the nonprofits world. What is your data saying, right? What we just talked about is ideas for how they can help you get new people into the circle. This is for how you cultivate and steward the people already in your circle. Because remember, although we all are always looking for new donors, donor retention is far more effective than donor acquisition, right? If we can keep the donors we have and build better relationships with them, it will go much further than if we are constantly trying to find new donors. And given the current state of data in general, for every 10 people who make a first-time gift to your organization, only 1 or 2 are ever going to give a second gift. Once they give a second gift, if 10 people give a second gift, 6 or 7 of them are going to go ahead and give a third and a fourth and a fifth gift. If we can get someone to become a monthly donor, if 10 people become monthly donors, 8 or 9 of them stay monthly donors for 3 to 4 years. So working with who we already have in our database is a great way to get board members involved in cultivating the relationships with people who've already made a decision to be part of your community. So you look in your data and you start asking them to help you. They can be making thank you phone calls, or writing handwritten thank you notes, or sending a thank you video, or sending a note just to check in or have lunch with somebody. All of those things are really, really critical. But how do you decide who you're doing this with? The one that I don't have on here is first-time donors. Look in your data, find out who has ever only given one gift. If they are active donors, they are a top priority. Get board members calling them to thank them for their gift. I don't care if they gave you $5 or $50,000. Get someone to thank them personally for their gift. Create a welcome series. Get it going so that people who give a one-time gift feel more connected to you. Board members can be active in doing those things. Then, for all of the other donors, you want to be looking at different pieces of data so that you can make sure that you are doing your best to retain your donors. What is their total lifetime giving? If you pull your entire database of active donors for lifetime giving and you sort from largest to smallest, you begin to get board members plugged in to be cultivating those different folks. You start at the top. Maybe it's the ED who does that. Maybe it's the board chair. Who has the best relationship with the folks who are most invested in your organization already? Those are natural relationships that you can just foster. Very non-threatening. What was the largest gift size? So there is lifetime giving, but there is also largest gift size. If someone has the capacity to give you $1,000 at a one-time gift, they probably have capacity to do some other things if they feel like their engagement will make a difference. So who's finding that out? Board members can find this out. Even if a board member has one meeting a month with one of these higher end donors to learn more about them, to tell them more about the organization, to listen to why that donor cares about this cause, it's going to go a long way, right? Who has given consecutive years? We've all read the news reports of the $20 million bequest that was left to the local YMCA or the local library from the janitor who only ever gave $10 a month, $10 a year, right? For 25 years, that person gave $100, $10, $25, and left a bequest because they felt this organization was important. So who's cultivating those relationships? Who's making sure? I've had clients who pull these reports and see folks that have been lost in the weeds because they weren't considered major donors. But over time, they have been consistent, regular cheerleaders and supporters. Monthly donors are great, right? Monthly donors are invested. So who's working on cultivating these relationships, not just via email? Email is a great tool. Social media are great tools for the mass market approach. But once someone is in your database, your board members can be critical in cultivating and nurturing the pre-existing relationships. Everyone wants to focus on board members finding new people, but board members can come in and be cheerleaders for the people already in there. All right. And frequent and multi-year giving is the same, right? If people are giving every time you ask and you ask 6 times a year, they are bought in. You're not asking them enough. If people give every time you ask, you are not asking them enough. You should be hearing no, because otherwise people haven't hit their capacity. But you won't know these things until you begin to build relationships with these folks and hear what they care about. Because people, often we as nonprofits talk about, make a donation today to help us fulfill our mission. When in reality, what we need to be doing is reaching out to donors and saying, what is your vision for the world you want to live in that motivated you to make a donation to this organization? And ask them, how can we help you fulfill your mission? Because they are on a mission. Otherwise, they would not have given you money. They wanted something to happen. So if you can learn more about what they want to happen in the arena of your cause area, it could be magic, right? Because you may have an idea of something you want to do that's so much bigger and bolder and more impactful than what you're doing, but you don't have the money. And they may be looking for someone to do that, but don't realize that that's the direction you want to go if only you have money. Until we start having these conversations, we will never know. And this is where board members can be so effective. So I just wanted to take a moment to show you, no matter what database you have, there should be a way to pull standard reports. These reports are standard reports because they're useful. Every donor platform has some variation of these. And so look for them and start saying, what can I learn from these? And how can I get board members involved? Now, this is the view. This is a screenshot of a Bonterra Network for Good database, right? They call them recommended filters. You can save your own filters and you can create new filters. But the idea of live bunts and sci-bunts, these are people who have given to you before. Pull these lists and get board members engaged with these people. Another one that I know Network for Good has, I'm not sure if your database does, but if it doesn't, create it. Create it and find it. Donors at risk of lapsing in the next 30 days. These are people who gave last year around this time, and if they don't give again, they become lapsed. You want to catch people before they lapse. Board members can make some phone calls. And I know, I hear all of you screaming at me, but our board members won't make phone calls. We give them lists. Okay? Sit with them. Do it with them. Do one for them. Ask them to do one. Demonstrate how it's done. Don't be afraid to help them be better at what they promise to do. If it is a time question, then free up board meeting time. Your meeting's too long, I guarantee it. You can take 15 minutes for every board member to make a quick phone call and most likely leave a message, because nobody answers their phone from a stranger's call anymore, right? Like, there's all of these things, right? But you're starting with people who already demonstrated they care. That's half the burden, right? This is just another demo of all the different ways you can manipulate your data. Figure out how you can manipulate your data in your database so that you can get manageable lists. If your live bunt list, if your lapsed donor list is 5,000 people, you can't start there, right? You've got to say 5,000 people who've given a largest gift amount of this, size or above. And the recency, who was the most recent, right? Like you've got to figure out who are the most recently consistently engaged and at what capacity, and work your way through that list. Then you have to make sure that your data is good for your board members to use. Have you built out your communications tab to make sure that anyone who accesses this profile is able to see the last touch point that was made? Who was it made by? How was it made? Did they open the emails? Did they open the text message? Right? What are their relationships? Who else in your database are they connected with? What are the notes? What did someone learn about this donor when they last spoke to them? What custom fields do you need to have? Maybe to even assign solicitors. Which board member is cultivating this person? So anybody who opens that profile knows. And then create a task list, create the personal cultivation plan for each of those donors. So if I'm a board member, you've given me 3 people, not 30 people, 3 people to cultivate in the next 6 months till we get to December 31st. My name is attached in their custom fields. I have access to their profile. I can see every email they opened. I can look at that email. I can see that they are an employer of somebody in the database or an employee of someone else in the database. I can map out what I'm going to do over the next 6 months to cultivate this. And then I keep notes in that database so that if I have to drop the ball, because something in my life changes, I'm able to say, hey, the profile's up to date, but I got to let this one go. My job just got 10 times harder. I've got 7 new people, and that's their living. Their job is their living. They're donating their time and talent and treasure to you as volunteers. So you got to create an environment where they feel okay to say that. Because again, remember, no one joined a board to fail. No one joined a board so that everybody else in the boardroom is saying they're dead weight. Nobody did that. But we set up systems where people feel like they can't tell us the truth. Right? We have to be honest and authentic. If one person can give 20 minutes of time every month and another person can give 20 hours, that's okay. Honor them for what they bring to the table. Be honest about it. Don't let anybody be ashamed. I care about this cause. I can give you 20 minutes. What's the best use of my 20 minutes? Is the best use of my 20 minutes sitting in an hour and a half to 2-hour board meeting? No, it's not, but I'll make these 2 phone calls in 20 minutes. And I'll read the reports when my baby's asleep or when I'm on the train to work or whatever, and I'll give you comments when I can. How many people allow that kind of honesty and authenticity amongst your board? That's what's going to make a difference, and your software tool is going to be what makes it possible for everybody to still be on the same page with each of those donors. One tool that can be very effective but is often misused and misunderstood is peer-to-peer campaign. There are different types of peer-to-peer campaign, and the thing that often happens is we run them simultaneously instead of serially, okay? We can run asynchronous peer-to-peer campaigns, synchronous ones, simultaneous ones, when the whole board comes together and says, we're running this campaign for 3 weeks, can be very effective if everybody's situation in life lines up for those 3 weeks. But there's also nothing wrong with creating a peer-to-peer campaign where every month a different board member is running their campaign because that's what fits into their schedule. It's kind of like, lo and behold, Facebook fundraising, where everybody picks their birth date to run a fundraiser. Bring that in-house. At the beginning of the year, set up a peer-to-peer campaign for every board member, and they get to run it during their birthday month. What's wrong with that? It can still show up as part of the peer-to-peer campaign, right? So you can decide on one time frame, or you can decide to run them serially or asynchronously, but everybody has a page, right? What you want to encourage is that no one person fundraises for too long. And too long is relative, right? For some people, too long is more than a weekend. For other people, it's more than a month. I've seen people who run peer-to-peer campaigns for 6 months because they've done that circle of influence exercise, and they know there are people who they see daily, weekly, monthly, frequently, annually, and they want to make sure their personal campaign runs the gamut so they don't miss anybody, right? There is no one way to do these things. It is a tool that you can use if you give your board members freedom. The other thing that you want to do is make sure that when you are beginning to set your goals and give the tools and do all of these things, that you ask them what their goal is. Because I might sit on your board with a very small network of people, family, friends, colleagues. And Amanda might sit on your board with a wide range of people because she's on a flag football team and she's a coworker in a massive organization. I'm an independent contractor and I sit here in my room by myself and I don't play flag football, right? I don't have that kind of a network. So I may say I can raise $200 for you. And Amanda might say, I can raise 2,000 for you, and that's okay. And then you create your goal, your overarching goal, based on what your primary fundraisers have said they think they can raise, right? Make sure it makes sense. I've seen organizations where their Vista, AmeriCorps, intern folks each say, I'll raise $200 while I'm here, and it's the course of a month or 6 months or whatever, but they have 20 people doing it. That's a nice chunk of money, right? But each one is just saying they'll raise $200. Now, if that organization said, you all have to raise $50,000, as a whole, figure it out, that's not going to sit well, and it's not going to work, and it's going to be a failure. And what you want when you're getting board members to start actually asking for money beyond the inviting to events and selling raffle tickets, but outright saying, support this cause with me. You want success. So start small. Start small, give people a sense of success. Then they will be more eager to try again the next time with a little bit of a stretch goal. But if you don't right size their expectations that they will hear no as much as they hear yes, if not more, right? The average, if you ask 5 people for a gift, 1 gives you a gift. That means 4 people say no, right? So you want to ask them to ask people, not ask 10 people, not get 10 gifts kind of thing, right? So set reasonable, right-sized expectations, create tools for them, use an online platform, give them emails and logos and photos, and give them everything they need to fundraise, and then create the tools you need to reach more people to help you fundraise, right? Write a strong case for support. If people don't know why they're fundraising, what the end result is, they do not fundraise for you. A confused mind does not make a decision. I see a raised hand. Amanda, do you see that?
I didn't see one pop in, but
Susan's
We're unable to let folks come off of mute.
Oh,
So Susan, whatever question you have, make sure you put it in the Q&A. We'll try to get to it.
sorry about that, Susan. Get it in the Q&A though, and we'll hop on it for sure.
Yeah.
You want your case for support, the reason someone should give to you, to be based on outcomes. What is the difference my $20 is going to make in the life of a human being or an animal or the earth or whatever, right? Even arts organizations and happy, sports teams and things like that, you're still making a difference in someone's life. And you've got to tap into that so that the board members who are going out have what they need: stories, data, final results, impacts to share with people if they ask. And then make sure that you've helped them create all the thank yous they need. Do they need a thank you video? Do they need a thank you note? Do they need a thank you for social media post? You can create all of those things ahead of time. Again, you've got to make it easy for fundraisers to fundraise as much as you make it easy for donors to donate. I think I've talked about most of this. Yeah. Get them excited. That's what all those pictures down there are for, right? You want to get them excited by giving them what they need to feel successful. This is just a list. You'll get the PowerPoint, I believe, with the recording, correct? But if not, they're here. Emails, social media posts, thank yous, logos, photos, videos, phone scripts, letters. Some people like to communicate by letter. Don't miss that opportunity. Give them all the resources they need. In Network for Good, there is a platform that lets you in 3 steps go through that whole process. If you don't have a peer-to-peer platform, find one, because it does make it easy for those whose networks live online, right? For those whose networks live online, an online platform is critical to that process. In Network for Good, a page, giving a peer-to-peer page, you see it shows all the fundraisers and the progress towards their goal. They each have different goal amounts, and they're each making different progress to it. All of this helps them. It inspires them to feel like they're part of a bigger community, and they're celebrating collective generosity. And anybody who goes to make a donation can celebrate that with them, because these kinds of crowdfunding peer-to-peer campaigns work because I know my $10 is being joined with all of these other people's $10. And that's going to make me more likely to give, because my $10 alone doesn't do a whole lot. That's the thinking, right? The final thing I'd like to talk about is the different types of events that you can think about that board members can be involved with. Is there a board member who has an activity that they love that can be a one-off type of niche event? And I call these one-off because if you hold a 5K or a trivia night or a music festival, or now all the rage is a pickleball tournament, right? If you do these things, many of the attendees are not going to convert to lifelong donors, right? But if there is a board member that is passionate about pickleball and they want to pull together, not you, no, not you. They want to pull together a pickleball tournament, by all means, let them, right? It's their way to get involved. It's something they're passionate about, but know that 95% of the people who attend that are attending the activity, not a mission-focused event. And therefore you give staff time accordingly, right? There are the mission focused direct asks. These are the crowdfunding. These are the peer-to-peer campaigns. These are direct mail campaigns. What part does a board member want to play in these? Can they write the letter if they're good at it? Believe me, don't let them write a letter if they aren't willing to take advice from consultants who are coaching you. Don't let them write the letter. But can they send it out to people? Yes, they can send it out to people, right? That's a thing they can be involved in. They can be involved in an invitation only VIP house party event. They can offer their backyard. It doesn't have to be fancy. It does not have to be fancy. They can have a backyard barbecue and invite people to come and listen to someone talk about the nonprofit that they support, about whether or not you want to support it. How many people go to timeshare presentations for the vacation they get with no intention of buying a timeshare, right? People can come to your party because you're having a party. They'll listen to the mission presentation, and some of those people will respond. Not all of them, but some of them will respond. It's always a numbers game. The more house parties you have, the more people you invite, the more likely it is that 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 of them are going to become believers in your cause, whatever that cause is. And then there's the large mission focus, galas, auctions, whatever's, right? Where everyone knows that the mission, that school or that program or that nonprofit, the Y, the Boys Club, whatever, is having this event, and they'll go, and they're not anticipating a whole lot, but they like it enough to show some support. What part does the board play in getting people to that event? And what part does the board play in circulating throughout that event to identify new potential donors? Their job is to not sit there with their best buddies. Their job is to circulate and find new best buddies, right? To do follow-up after, all of those things. So a quick recap, and then we only have 4 minutes left for questions. I am so sorry. This is the recap. You can read that on your own. Remember, passion, gratitude, opportunity. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah, thank you so much, Janet. I know you had said you started this with, not sure if we're going to be able to solve for the board troubles, but I think you gave a lot of really great ideas, and I saw that come through the chat. So really appreciate you sharing all of those ideas with us, Janet. I'm going to jump into questions quickly to get to them. And one of them that I saw come through was about a lot of folks were saying, how do we get our boards involved and talking to donors if they don't have access to our CRM? And one thing I shared was that Bonterra, Network for Good, that system does have unlimited admin access that you can change the privacy for. So if folks are interested in learning more, I am going to put up a quick poll if you want to explore those. While Janet, I let you kind of maybe give some advice to the folks who might not have that system in place or might not have that as an option, where you say, how do we get them to contact our donors if that donor information is sensitive or they don't have access to that tool?
Yeah, print out one sheets for a donor, because you don't want your board members knowing exactly what the person's donor history is. You want them to know what their relationship history is. So if you don't have the capability to give limited view, then you definitely want to pull out one sheets, create profile pages, a little directory. These are your 3 people. This is what we know about them, and keep them updated if things change along the way. That would be my recommendation. Because you don't want to give full access to your database to everybody under the sun.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And though I think the point is, right, having that access, right? So another question came in. This one was from Molly, who I saw asking about board member timelines and how to get them aligned with that of the organization. So, you were talking about those, like, have different availabilities, right, of different board members. So do you have any recommendations to kind of tap into that so that it aligns with, when your big needs are, when your big event is, when giving season comes around?
Yeah, I think the big thing is very, very early planning, right? Like you've got to project ahead of time so that you can align their timeline with yours more than vice versa. And that's a hard thing to do. I know you have 100,000 things to do. Break them down into, I'm all about a 15-minute fundraising plan. Everybody who is a paid employee should be able to spend 15, or in development should spend 15 minutes a day at the very least, doing something related to fundraising. Can you help break down the tasks for the board members so that you can get some better alignment? And that takes planning ahead of time, which usually really starts with the very big strategic planning process, because then everyone's goals are, you're all going in the same direction. We can't be in a hurry. We have to act quickly, but not in a hurry. We have to start acting as soon as possible, but break it down so that they can be done and everybody's can sort of, it takes a while, but they can align.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we're right at time. What do you say, Janet? One more question? You wanna?
Sure,
All
I'm
right.
open for another
Let's
question.
let's see if we can take one more. And I this one might take a lot more time than one more, but let's see if you have one tidbit of advice. Janet, you were talking about, data mining, right? And taking notes and, running those reports. And, a lot of folks we work with, are doing a million other things, right? And so the question came in here, right? How do I find the time to do that when I've got so many other things on hand? Or do you have any recommendations on, maybe quick ways to take notes, or ways to make sure that that becomes a priority?
Yeah, again, that for me goes back to that 15 minutes, right? Can you identify 50, and if you can't give 15, 10 minutes a day to just play catch up with some of those things. And believe it or not, I give this advice to a lot of my chief everything officers, right? That
Yeah.
are doing 100,000 things. And just by taking 15 minutes to create a list of everything that you could do in 15 minutes, and then when you have 15 minutes, you do it,
Yeah.
it moves the needle very, very quickly, right?
Yeah.
Because instead of thinking about, oh, what can I do? You take 15 minutes. Even if you're about to walk out the door, it's like, oh, let me give 15 minutes. I'm going to download that report, or I'm going to make that note, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is especially around notes for donor meetings,
Mm,
if you can give yourself a buffer of 5 minutes post call or conversation to jot down some notes,
yeah.
or to get a little voice recorder and record just your thoughts that will trigger, so that when you go to sit down to write notes, you can.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. I feel like I'm like, how can I use that in my day to day? Like that 15-minute mark. That's a really great way to
Makes a
think about
huge
it.
difference.
Yeah, and I feel like it makes it less intimidating, right? Where, 15 minutes feels much more feasible. So
If you skip it any one day, you've only lost 15 minutes.
right.
If you block 3 hours to work on fundraising and a fire, a proverbial fire starts in your organization, you've lost 3 hours.
Yeah.
And when are
Yeah.
you going to schedule that again? It's not
Right.
going to happen,
Right.
right? You've got to do the, 15 minutes. If you lose it, the next day you do 15 minutes. You don't have to make up the 15 minutes because it was just 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Jana. I don't know if you've seen the chat. People are praising this session, saying this was super helpful. These tips were really applicable and informative. I saw someone say this was really refreshing and one of the best webinars they've attended thus far. So, really appreciate all of your knowledge, Janet. As always, I told you from the beginning, those were here, that you were in for a treat. So really appreciate all of your engagement. Appreciate everyone for attending with us here today. We will be sending the recording of this session again. If you want to share it with your board, I recommend you do that, so that they can kind of hear some of these words maybe from somebody else other than you. I know we've seen a lot of success with that. So we'll share that with folks. Again, if you're looking for tools that are going to help you kind of move that engagement to the next level and you don't have those systems in place and you want to learn more, I'd recommend checking out a demo of Bonterra here. You can request them through our website or follow up with us over email here. But really appreciate everyone joining us today, spending an hour, more than 15 minutes with us and to learn these tips. So hope it was helpful and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
And find me on LinkedIn if you're interested.
All right. Take care, folks. Have a good one.